WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the program, we'll hear an update on the Crumbly trial as Ethan's parents were sentenced to 10 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter.
But first, on the Metro, we are all excited about the NFL draft scheduled to take place later this month. In fact, more than 300,000 people are expected at the event, and that means a lot of mouths to feed and potentially a lot of waste. One group concerned about waste is Metro Food Rescue, and they've been selected as the official food rescue partner for Detroit's NFL Draft event starting April 25th through the 27th right here in the city. To learn more about what that means, we are joined by the organization's founder and CEO, Chad Techner. Chad, welcome to the Metro.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm really excited to be here and talk to you about this awesome and fun opportunity.
All right. Well, I want to learn a little bit more before we get into the opportunity about specifically what food rescue is, because the last rescue mission I remember was a 3-hour tour involving Gilligan. So tell me, what exactly is food rescue?
Yeah. So in this country, we waste 40% of the food that is destined to be eaten. Well, 1 in 5 kids doesn't have enough to eat. And it's a crazy thing to think about that both are going on at the same time. And often they're going on very close to each other. Some of the food that is wasted isn't recoverable, but much of it is. So we rescue high quality, delicious, recoverable food from all sorts of sources. Last year, we picked up from 55 different places, from grocery stores, big box stores, farms, farmers markets, food manufacturers, all sorts of different things. And there's all sorts of reasons why food gets wasted. Sometimes they just, make too much. Sometimes it doesn't sell as well. I mean, I can't imagine being in charge of ordering for a grocery store and having to guess exactly how much of everything to order for all of the people who are going to come in that day when you don't know who's coming, how many people are coming, or what they want to have for dinner. As a society, we also demand that, you don't just have to have some apples. You have to have, a giant, beautiful triangle of apples. And you have to have 7 different kinds of apples. And so all of these demands just create an excess. And so, we pick up, like I said, all of the, food that is still good and delicious, but for one reason or another, whether it's, short dated or just excess, isn't going to be used at the place, and take it to someone who can use it.
Yeah. So what will Metro Food Rescue be doing at the NFL Draft this year?
Yeah, so we've partnered with the NFL Draft to do the food rescue. As you said in the intro, there's going to be lots of mouths to feed, and there's always excess food. That's just kind of how things work in this world. The last thing that anyone wants to be is out of food. And so they make a little bit of extra, and they try and, get the numbers right. But when you have 300,000 people coming, a little bit of extra means a lot of food. We're expecting to pick up anywhere between 30 and 50,000 pounds of food, or enough food to feed 25 to 30,000 meals to our neighbors in need. And the amazing thing, like I said, is these things are so close to each other. We have 4 of our partners who are ready to receive this food that are less than a mile away from the event. And we have several other partners that are only 2 or 3 miles away from the event. And so the need is often just down the road or just next door to the place where the excess is.
Yeah, it's kind of meeting that need with the ability to fulfill it, which seems like the bridge you guys are solving. But the thing that I hear, when I hear a number like you just mentioned, can you quantify for us who aren't in this world of food rescue, what does that look like? How many mouths are you able to feed with that kind of number of food or amount of food?
I mean, if it's, 25,000 meals, we're going to be, taking all of this food to agency partners all over the Detroit area. And they're going to be, they regularly feed 2,000 to 4,000 each week. And so this food is going to, not only get out there, but get out there quickly, where we, drop it off to an agency, whether it's, catered food like this. We drop that off to agencies that do more bulk feeding, or, the fresh fruits and vegetables often go to the places like a food pantry that are giving out groceries to a family. And so in either case, often the food that we pick up in the morning is at someone's house and on a plate by that evening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the other things that I was looking at with this is maybe I'm in my personal life and I buy too much food. So I might think of, is there a way I could get involved with the rescue mission? But before we even get in with that, the first question is, what does it mean to be food that can be transferred, right? You don't want to just try to give somebody else your junk. And I think some people would be a little bit reticent to try to volunteer food they're not going to use to someone else, saying maybe it's not high enough quality. So how do you determine what the quality standard is, what you guys use in terms of what you transport? And then for people who would want to maybe do something like this outside of these big events, what recommendations would you have for them?
Yeah, so there's lots of, great ways that people can get involved. We only pick up, catering type foods and foods like that from certified food handlers and from those who are handling it properly. And then we take it directly to another certified food handler to ensure the, safety and quality of the food. When it's the fresh fruits and vegetables, it's fairly easy. I mean, if you show up at a place that has excess tomatoes and they look like delicious tomatoes, we take them and give them to someone who wants tomatoes. Where, if they're all moldy, we would, sort through them and, collect the ones that were good and, discard the ones that weren't.
Yeah. And so for people who want to learn a little bit more or get involved and find out more information, what would you tell them?
Yeah, there's a number of great opportunities that people can get involved and help us with the draft rescue. They would basically come down at a time that worked for their schedule that we had to pick up and, help us load up the food and likely take it to one of our agency partners in their own vehicle, if that was an option for them, or they can just come down and, help us load. They can go to our website at metrofoodrescue.com. And there's a page right in the top navigation, or they can just go to metrofoodrescue.com/NFL draft and get all the information there. They can sign up to volunteer at the draft. And we have volunteer opportunities all throughout the year of smaller rescues that people can do and help us out all the time. We're doing more and more of these events. We've already signed up for the Detroit Grand Prix in a month, and are working on, filling out the calendar from there. And so there's lots of opportunities all through the summer, as well as we're going to be, working on solidifying our relationships with all of the stadiums, because at all of these major events, there's excess food waste, and there are neighbors that need it within a mile away. And so our goal is to bridge that gap. We don't really have a food problem in this country. There's plenty of food. We just don't get it to the people who need it at the right time.
Well, then,
so that's our goal.
Yeah, well, then before I let you go, let me take a look at this. Let's say I'm putting on an event. I don't know if I'm necessarily the scale or something that qualifies for what you guys do. So for people out here who are listening who might put on events themselves, maybe cater or do something like that, what is a good opportunity in terms of what they should be looking at as to whether they would be someone that would make sense for you? I mean, I'm thinking of the events that you've done before. I want to make sure that people who are listening can say, hey, I could fit into this. Maybe I should reach out and talk to Chad.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to talk to anyone who's doing, any scale of catering. Obviously, if it's a dinner in a home, it's probably not appropriate. At that point, it's better to, call your neighbor and offer them a bowl of pasta. Mm-hmm. But, if there's any caterers out there who are doing events, to be honest, the ones that have rescuable food are the ones that are more buffet style, where if it's a plated meal, we don't pick up stuff that's been served. And so, when it's a buffet and they have an extra couple sheet pans of this and that at the end of the night, that's where there's really great, rescuable food that we would love to work to get, to a neighbor who needs it.
All right, Chad Techner, founder and CEO of Metro Food Rescue. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is the Metro. Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. You just heard from Nick Austin. I'm Tia Graham. And coming up, we'll learn about the orange barrels that'll be popping up this spring and summer, impacting your everyday drive. You stay right there.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. It is spring, which means Michigan's state flower is in full bloom. The construction barrels are out, and it is blooming in several cities this season. Drivers can expect road work headed on major freeways like Southfield Freeway in Allen Park and Dearborn. 96 in Oakland County will also experience a few extra slowdowns. And to give us a roadmap of construction projects headed your way is Diane Cross, Michigan Department of Transportation Metro Region Media Representative. Diane, thanks for joining us on the Metro.
My pleasure. Good morning still for a little while.
I know it's been a little while, but it's great to hear from you. I just want to set up some context here. You know, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, she did have her big plan to make sure in her first term to fix the darn roads. In general, how's that been going?
Well, we definitely had a busy couple of years, and we've got a busy couple more before the majority of the major projects will be completed, and we will have used up our extra funding that we received. And while it is frustrating for everybody, and us too, our MDOT folks and our families drive these same freeways, so we hear about the delays all the time. But in a couple of years, you really will notice on how great it is to drive through Metro Detroit that almost every major freeway will have been renovated or redone in some way that we only have to go back out for maintenance. Now, 94 in Detroit and M10 the Lodge, those are older roads that will need working. But for the most part, in the last few years, we've worked on 275 and 96, and 96 to Flex will be done in a couple of years. 696 in the last 7 years, we've renovated almost all of it. And in the next coming years, we're going to do that last portion between Lasser and DeQuinder. That'll be a 2-year project that'll start in a couple of years. But pretty much everything else we've addressed.
Awesome. And Diane, I think about, of course, we go way back. I was a traffic reporter some years ago, and I think about some of the things that we were starting to see in motion. You talked about 275, one of the things that we definitely learned about 2-3 years ago. It's finally starting to wind down a little bit there as well. When you talked about 96, I-96 in that Flex area, we have some ramp closures that's going to be coming to Oakland County in that Novi, Wixom area that's going to really impact drivers trying to get onto I-96. So, you know, when we think about what's happening in Oakland County, especially starting this week, April 13th and 14th, we're going to start to see some traffic restrictions along I-275 as well as 96.
Correct. 275 has been roughly a 3-year project, and we're in the last year. So anything where we've got a lane closed because we're working on fixing those crossovers that used to go across the median when we were using on one side of the freeway, or landscaping fixes, that kind of thing, those are short term. You're not going to see anything more than a week or two in a different location. Things like 96 to Flex, this weekend we're going to be closing eastbound 96 from Milford to Novi because we're getting ready to shift the current westbound traffic into sharing the new eastbound side. So we'll have both east and west driving on that newly built eastbound side. Now, it's going to be rough because it's going to affect many of the ramps will be closed to you for going west, but we'll be driving on new pavement, so we won't have the delays because of potholes or, the repairs that we were having to do when we had traffic sharing an original old roadway. And again, it will be rough, especially for folks in that area. They don't have a lot of options. There's construction also going on 23, so you just have to plan a lot of extra time between now and probably October, November, when we're going to be working on so many of these freeways.
Wow. And, just thinking about just what's happening in general, we're going to move here to Wayne County. We have a particular area. It's a surface street area, Michigan Avenue. So if you are familiar with Michigan Avenue, right between Haggerty and Hannon Roads in that area, 275 as well, you'll start to see improvements happening starting Monday. And it's going to go all the way through July. What are people going to see in this Canton area, especially with such a busy intersection there?
It really is, and I drive it regularly, so I am fully aware that we just got done with all of the slowdowns because of the 275 work. at near Michigan, and it was affecting the ramps at Michigan, so drivers are going to have more of that delay. But if you drive it regularly, you know how rough a shape it's in. There's so many potholes on Michigan Avenue through that area. We're talking roughly as you're approaching 275 going west from, it's kind of like Lots would be maybe the major cross straight over to toward Canton Center. That whole stretch will be down to just 1 and 2 lanes. Some of the intersections you'll have slowdowns as well while we rebuild that roadway. Again, you got to look at it as a short-term pain, and it is a pain, but for long-term gain, right? We want our roads to be in good shape. But over the years, before the last, few years, we were always short of funding. We were always putting Band-Aids on areas that needed surgery. While we've been doing a lot of surgery the last couple of years with these major projects. Also in Wayne County, in the next couple of years, we're going to have a Ford Road project that's going to go from Lots to Lilly, where we're going to rebuild that roadway and make that a boulevard. We've got an upcoming project on the Southfield Freeway, M39, from 94 to Ford Road. Again, it's going to be rough for folks in Dearborn, but that road's in rough shape, and we gotta make it better, and we've got the money, so we got to do it.
Yeah, Diane, just really quickly, talking about Southfield Freeway in general, MDOT's investing $15.5 million in this project. So what all are we going to see with what's happening on Southfield Freeway within that Allen Park, Dearborn area? Are we seeing a widening of the shoulders? Are we seeing...
No. In fact, very seldom will you see the word widening in a freeway happen ever again.
Okay.
We don't widen a roadway. The exception to that is that 96 Flex route, because we're using those shoulders as a lane temporarily.
Okay.
Eastbound in the morning, you're going to get to use the left lane as a lane. Therefore, it has to be wide enough to be able to accommodate the traffic with a little wiggle room on each side of a little bit of a shoulder. Not enough that you can pull off of, but there's certain standards on that. And then in the afternoon, westbound traffic will be able to use that left shoulder as a lane. But normally, the days of widening freeways, those are long over. We just don't do that. But what we do is we reconstruct within the footprint we already have. So for M39, we can't widen it. But what we're going to do is we're going to reconstruct it and patch it where it needs patching, concrete repair. So sometimes it'll be we're only cutting out maybe a section of the road that's really bad and pulling that out and replacing just that. Things with the barrier wall that separates north and southbound. If you drive that, it's a pretty tight squeeze there, and there are crashes, and those walls do get hit regularly, like every freeway does, and that kind of thing is going to be repaired. The ramps at Michigan Avenue, at Ford Road, all of those back to 94, all of those will be worked on as well. So during the worst of it, we will have ramp closures between M39 and I-94 that will affect drivers, and we'll do our best to get the word out about that.
And my last thing is the clarification of widening, because I love that you just, we're not doing that anymore. We're fixing the existing spaces that we have. So what does that look like in terms of some of the larger projects that we're going to see?
Well, for example, and this is a number of years out, but once I heard this, it kind of really helped me understand the I-94 project in Detroit, which ultimately we have to reconstruct that freeway from the Dearborn border on the west all the way past downtown, right? 94 is in rough shape. But the last few years, we've been rebuilding those bridges over 94, and the bridges have been wider to accommodate when we rebuild that freeway. But what we will do to bring a 50, 60-year-old freeway up to the standards of today is we need wider shoulders. So instead of having the slopey grass that comes down the side, that's part of our footprint. We will reconfigure that freeway to fit within the footprint to give us safer lane widths and safer shoulder widths, because very often when we have crashes, it's not always the first crash that's the problem. It's a secondary crash because that first crash didn't have enough room to pull over and they get hit from behind. So wider shoulders to today's standards are what you need to have it be safe for you to be pulled over, change a tire, police pull you over, whatever, that there's room to safely be on a shoulder.
Diane, thank you so much. Diane Cross, Michigan Department of Transportation Metro Region Media Representative. Thank you so much for chatting with us, letting us know some of the things that are going to be headed our way this spring and summer, and just to prepare for those construction barrels popping up. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Have a great day.
You too.
This is the Metro on 1019 WDET, and in the news, the Environmental Protection Agency plans to clean up contaminated soil at Bellinger Park in River Rouge after elevated levels of lead and cadmium were found. The EPA will excavate a foot of topsoil in the contaminated areas and replace it with clean dirt. EPA on-scene coordinator Brian Kelly says contamination may have come from people dumping unwanted dirt in the area. They're currently ahead of schedule and looking to finish the cleanup in June.
This is the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. Nick Austin is here. I'm Tia Graham, just like I said. And Jennifer and James Crumbley have been sentenced to at least 10 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter after their son, Ethan, killed 4 students in 2021 at Oxford High School. WDET's Quinn Kleinfelder has been following the trial and tracked the most recent developments of the story.
Jennifer and James Crumbley were convicted of involuntary manslaughter, and the sentencing hearing marked the first time families of the victims at Oxford High directly addressed them. Parents like Nicole Beausoleil, whose daughter was shot at point-blank range, told the couple they deserved to be found guilty after buying their son a powerful handgun when he was already spiraling into despair.
Not only did your son kill my daughter, but you both did as well. The words involuntary should not be a part of your offense. Everything you did that day, months prior, and days after were voluntary acts.
The prosecution claimed the parents had shown a, quote, chilling lack of remorse, that James Crumbley even made profanity-laced threats against the prosecutor on jailhouse phone calls he knew were being recorded. Crumbley countered that he was only venting his frustration after being jailed for more than 2 years. And in the courtroom, Crumbley told the victims' families he grieved with them over what his son had become and what had been taken away from them.
I am sorry for your loss as a result of what my son did. I cannot express how much I wish that I had known what was going on with him or what was going to happen.
Both Crumbleys wanted the judge to sentence them to time served or to be released under house arrest. Jennifer Crumbley even requested to serve her time at the home of her defense attorney. She said the prosecution cast her as a parent who did not care about her son Ethan, when in fact she was simply a normal mother who never knew the heinous crime the teen had planned.
This could be any parent up here in my shoes. Ethan could be your child, could be your grandchild, your niece, your nephew, your brother, your sister. Your child can make a fatal decision, not just with the gun, but a knife, a vehicle, intentionally or unintentionally.
But from the bench, Judge Cheryl Matthews said handing down the toughest sentence possible, 10 to 15 years, was not a message to other parents. Matthews said it was targeted specifically at a couple who never took the time to address their son's mental health, and even after being shown violent drawings he made in class, failed to tell the school they had just bought the teen a gun.
These convictions are not about poor parenting. These convictions confirm repeated acts or lack of acts that could have halted an oncoming runaway train, about repeatedly ignoring things that would make a reasonable person feel the hair on the back of their neck stand out.
The Crumbleys remained in the courtroom briefly after the sentence was pronounced, so they could fill out paperwork to begin the process of filing an appeal.
That was WDET's Quinn Kleinfelder reporting on the Crumbley trial. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Nick Austin. Coming up, we'll talk about a new program that is helping to reduce the risk of people returning to jail right here in Michigan. We'll get into that and more when we return on the Metro.
Welcome back to the Metro, right here on 1019 WDET FM, your daily source for arts, culture, and news. I'm Tia Graham.
And I am Nick Austin. And here in the United States, we hold 20% of the world's population of incarcerated people, despite only maintaining 5% of the global population. And because of that, many social workers, activists, and lawyers have been working to reduce the number. There have been some positive trends, like right here in Michigan, where prison population, though it recently increased, only did so after dropping 20,000 from the mid-2000s up until 2022. And locally, Wayne County's jail population plummeted from 25,000 to 7,000 in about 6 years, up through 2022, last numbers we checked. And recently, there has been more good news in the world of decreasing incarceration. Last week, Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson shared the results of the I.G.N.I.T.E program at his Genessee County Jail, which lowered the number of people re-entering the prison. Here's a clip from his speech.
What if I told you that the answer to reduce crime is I.G.N.I.T.E? Not just by a little bit, but by 23%. What if I told you that Genessee County saved $560,000 in 1 year because 100 less people are in jail? What if I told you that not only have we increased math and reading proficiency, but we did it by more than a grade to a grade and a half? And the fact that the relationship of the community with the staff and law enforcement within this community is not only better, but is in a more trusted way. So says Harvard University, Brown University, and the University of Michigan.
When we talk about the I.G.N.I.T.E program, you see the word, and it stands for Inmate Growth Naturally and Intentionally through Education. But what exactly is the program? To learn a little bit more, we have one of the authors of a study on it, and that is Peter Hull, a professor of economics at Brown University. Professor Hull, welcome to the Metro.
Thanks very much for having me.
Happy to have you here because I read the name and the report, but I'd like to get a little bit from you specifically on how you would define for people who aren't so familiar what the I.G.N.I.T.E program is and how it works.
Sure. So as you said, I.G.N.I.T.E stands for Inmate Growth Naturally and Intentionally through Education. It's an innovative law enforcement-led rehabilitation program that launched in September 2020 in Genessee County Jail. So nominally, I.G.N.I.T.E is an educational program which offers tailored coursework and training to basically all jailed individuals with very high take-up rates. So some students in the jail might be earning their high school diploma or getting their GED, for example. Others might be receiving specialized job training, say in commercial truck driving or food services and the like. In practice, however, what we've found is that I.G.N.I.T.E is far more than an educational program. Administrators emphasize a real cultural change in the jail that coincided with the program, both for incarcerated individuals and for correctional officers. Officers were asked to facilitate a learning environment, treating incarcerated individuals as students capable of real change and growth in a meritocratic system that rewarded hard work. And so this is a really inclusive program, both on the side of offering educational opportunities and really sort of changing the culture of the jail itself. And then the program is also notable because it was largely funded with existing county resources and staff, which means it is implemented at a relatively low cost.
So when we look at how this looks just on a ground level for folks, we talk about education. What were people in the I.G.N.I.T.E program specifically doing for inmates that were at the Genessee County Jail?
Yeah, so as I said, it is a really tailored program. So individuals come in and are sort of assessed in terms of what sort of educational opportunities are best fit for them and what they want to pursue. And then it was really kind of individually driven. So the program operates for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. During that time, incarcerated individuals are sort of working on Google Chromebooks or tablets, completing different educational activities while being sort of facilitated by educators in the day room of Genessee County Jail. And so, it's really on an individual basis. As I mentioned, sort of there is formal educational programs as well as sort of tailored job training. And our understanding is that individuals, sort of a large share of individuals, go on to continue that sort of education after leaving the jail.
Yeah, and why is a program like this so important? Because if I think about the economics of it, right, for some, we have, of course, reducing the likelihood that somebody goes back into prison is very important, because that would mean if they don't go back, maybe they're not committing another crime, or maybe adding to the economy of the population around them. But for you, when you're looking at programs like this, to explain to other folks why you think it's so important, how do you try to explain that to them in your research?
Yeah, so I think the headline results of the study are really important in terms of reducing not only recidivism rates outside of the jail, also reducing misconduct rates within the jail. So we found very large reductions on both of those. As you say, we can sort of translate these things into economic costs. Crime is very costly, and so we sort of do an estimation of how much this saves in terms of economic impact, and we found that 1 month of exposure to this I.G.N.I.T.E program saves around $5,600 per person per year, which is where that number came from in the clip from the sheriff you played earlier. But to me, I think the results we're finding go well beyond those economic costs. I think it's very hard to fully capture the benefits of a program like this, particularly with regards to the sort of culture shift that I was mentioning before in the jail. So in addition to estimating effects on recidivism and misconduct, we actually went out and conducted a number of surveys in Genesee County to try and get a sense of this cultural change. And what we found from conducting these surveys on the ground is that individuals who were exposed to I.G.N.I.T.E said that they were sort of had a more favorable impression and view of local law enforcement, so it seemed to improve community relations on that basis. We found suggestive evidence that exposed individuals were more likely to be engaged in positive activities like working for pay or obtaining further education. And we also found from surveying the staff in the jail that it sort of worked in the other way as well. So staff, I think some of them maybe were initially kind of skeptical that this kind of program could really work. But what we found was a large number of staff, including the staff who were most sort of exposed to the program, seemed to experience a change in how they viewed the promise for programs like this. So individuals, staff who were sort of exposed to the I.G.N.I.T.E program were more likely to see educational rehabilitation programs in jail like this as worth the time and money, which I think is, again, speaking to this much broader cultural shift.
Yeah, you're talking treating people like people, even if they're incarcerated. You're talking about net benefits for those who are in the prison, not just the inmates, but also staff. Talking about benefits for society, it sounds like a net benefit all the way around. But if I were to put my shoes on, or if I were to think about how someone outside the system might think of it, they might say, hey, you're looking at short-term results, but long-term, if we think prisons are a place where it's just a fun time, you can get an education and all of this stuff, won't that reduce the ability of prison to be something that's a deterrent? Won't more people decide, oh, well, prison's not that hard, I'll just do the time? What do you think that argument, or people who aren't implementing this elsewhere, miss about what you've seen here with your results?
Well, I'd say two things about that. So first of all, when it comes to the long-term impacts, we do study these effects over a fairly long horizon. So currently we are able to look at the reductions in recidivism over a 1-year horizon. And if anything, we see that the effects actually grow over time. So it doesn't seem to be a kind of short-run phenomenon. It seems to be a real lasting change in the trajectory of these individuals exposed to this program. On the other point, I think it's important to clarify that we're not sort of looking at the effects of exposure to jail itself. We are actually looking at those effects separately. But when we talk about the effects of the I.G.N.I.T.E program, we're doing it in such a way that we're looking at the effects of the program itself, holding fixed an individual's exposure to time in jail. So I don't want to give the impression that this is sort of a effect of time in jail itself. It really seems to be about the type of time that people spend in jail, and it seems to be that this program adds to the time that people would otherwise spend in terms of giving them these increased opportunities and skills. I do think that, a lot of people on the ground are very excited about the program. You heard the sheriff talk about his view of it. The National Sheriff's Association is also seems to be very positive about the program and is working right now to scale this program up to other jails across the country. I'm looking forward to continuing our work to study whether those scaling up effects are successful and whether this program can really replicate in other settings. But I think that's sort of based on what we've seen so far, the program really shows a lot of potential.
Yeah, looking forward to checking that out as well. Peter Hull, professor of economics at Brown University, thank you for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you very much.
And this is The Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. You just heard from Nick Austin, and I'm Tia Graham. Now, when Beyonce released Cowboy Carter last month, the 22-song country album surprised and delighted music fans across genres. I haven't stopped listening yet. The album features a cover of Dolly Parton's Jolene and an appearance from Willie Nelson himself. But why was it so shocking for some to hear Beyonce doing a country album in the first place? Music historian and journalist Dan Charnas joined Stephen Henderson and Carrie Jr. to discuss in a recent episode of Created Equal about the impact of Cowboy Carter.
Okay, guys, so I want to start with something that's just in the news now. Beyonce has this new album out that I think touches on a lot of the things that we want to think about here in this conversation. Cowboy Carter is really deeply inspired by country music. And in fact, it is drawing on a lot of country music. There are a lot of country artists who appear on the album. Their music appears. But then it also casts forward in the way that it includes Black artists who are performing now. And I think, in a way, it's kind of full circle, right? Like there is this evolution, I think, of the way in which music borrows from other music and then pushes it forward. And, of course, it's not without controversy because of our history and discrimination and racism and all those kind of things. But there's I think an opportunity with Beyonce doing what she's doing to stop and think about what all that means and how all of that frames the way we should be thinking about borrowing, about sampling, about compensation, and all those things. So Dan, I want to start with you just reacting to what Beyonce has done here and tell us what it means in some ways.
Well, I think one of the facts that is sort of lost on most folks, except for those like me who teach American popular music history, is that, the business of the record business and the music business was born during Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of what we think of as genre was essentially shaped by Jim Crow practices and thinking, but isn't necessarily the actual contour of music. And what I mean by that is in the early part of the, history of the record business, let's say the 1910s, 1920s, there emerged this idea of a genre called hillbilly. Mm-hmm. And there was another designation for music that was performed by Black artists that they called race music, and that might include rag, that might include blues, that might include jazz. But the fact of the matter is, musically speaking, the differences could often be very, very slender, if non-existent. For example, the country music industry, the hillbilly, lineage, traces itself back to something that is commonly called the Big Bang of country music, which was, I believe, 1926, 1927, when a A&R, talent scout / producer for Victor Records did a recording section, a massive recording session in Bristol, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And on the sort of same either it was the day or weekend or whatever sojourn this was, he recorded two towering icons of the country music business. You could think of this as the four fathers and four mothers, right? The Carter family on the one hand, and Jimmy Rogers on the other. Jimmy Rogers' first 12 songs for Victor were called Blue Yodels. Blue Yodel number 1, Blue Yodel number 2, Blue Yodel number 3, and so forth.
That was WDET's Stephen Henderson and Carrie Jr. speaking with hip-hop historian and journalist Dan Charnas on Created Equal. Coming up on the Metro, we'll learn about siblings. Welcome back to the Metro, right here on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham, here with Nick Austin. Nick, siblings.
That's right. A recent NPR series called specifically The Science of Siblings has started, and reporter Maria Godoy explored how families can facilitate healthy relationships between step-siblings.
When it comes to the do's and don'ts of blending a family, I want to introduce you to two stepsisters.
My name is Lisa Garrard.
I am Kirsten Brandt James.
In the early 1970s, Lisa's dad and Kirsten's mom were both widowed, with 3 children each, kind of like the Brady Bunch. The parents were old friends from school who started dating one summer. Within 2 short months, they were married.
I was shocked.
It was shocking to us as well.
For Kirsten, the marriage meant a move from her home in California to Texas, a new house with new siblings, and a new school.
I cried. I think we were upset. Yeah, it was like, you're kidding me. You're ruining my life.
We weren't going anywhere, but it was still shocking to us.
Now, some 50 years later, these step-siblings are as close as can be. All 6 of them Zoom weekly to catch up. They consider each other siblings, no step prefix needed.
When people ask me, are you close to your siblings? I say yes. I consider us close.
Love them all. Yeah, they're all my siblings. Yeah, absolutely.
So how can parents set the stage for step-siblings to truly bond? Research says, take it slowly.
Becoming a stepfamily is a process. It is not an event. It takes time.
That's Patricia Papernow. She's a psychologist who's been focusing on stepfamilies for more than 40 years. And she says rushing into a new family is usually not a good idea for kids.
The couple's in love. They want to form a family. And oftentimes they charge ahead. And one of the dilemmas is, as the rate of change goes up, kids' well-being goes down. Kids need to go much more slowly.
Of course, Lisa and Kirsten's parents did rush in, but even so, they did a lot of other things right. For example, one thing research has shown is that it's important for parents to create new family rituals that encourage everyone in the stepfamily to bond. Kirsten and Lisa's parents took that seriously. Here's Lisa.
We had to go to church on Sunday as a family. We're going on vacation as a family. We're eating as a family. So it was very family oriented.
While creating new family rituals is important, stepfamily researcher Caroline Sanner says it's also vital to preserve one-on-one time between a parent and their biological child.
Is so important for the maintenance of that relationship. I mean, from kids' perspectives, so much is changing when stepfamilies are being formed. Their parent is developing relationships with their new partner and also with their partner's kids.
Sanders says that can add to the stress and insecurity the biological kid may be feeling.
And that can create feelings of jealousy, but that often comes from something much deeper, which is a feeling of loss or grief or feeling really anxious about the ways in which your relationship with your parent is changing.
She says when kids feel secure in their relationship with their biological parent, they're less likely to feel negative towards their step-siblings, and that helps them be more open to bonding. But she says don't force it.
There's so much in this transition that they're not in control of. And so feeling kind of forced to bond with these new family members can be really overwhelming. So allowing them to go at their own pace, really honoring their feelings and the speed at which they want to bond allows them, I think, to be much more receptive to bonding with their step-siblings. Whereas if it feels forced, No one wants to be, in a relationship with someone where it feels forced.
Stepmom Kylie Thompson took this to heart when her soon-to-be stepson Finley refused to attend her wedding to his dad, Mark.
And it was about 2 weeks before the wedding that I've said to Mark, let him make the choice. This is his choice. He is adamant about it. We cannot force him. And if we do force him, it will set the stage for more resentment further on down the line.
Finley was 11 at the time and didn't end up going. But now, 7 years later, she says they've grown close.
Step-parenting is not a short game. This is a long game. If you're in for the long term with your new husband or wife, you have to be even longer in there for your stepkids.
Instead of forcing the relationship, all the researchers I talked to advise creating opportunities for step-siblings to bond, whether it's over a shared love of music or sports or video games. And here's another really important tip. When it comes to discipline, Patricia Pappernow says the step-parent should stay out of it. She says the research is clear that when step-parents get involved in discipline, their budding relationship with their stepchild can turn toxic.
In fact, what works is the parent retains the disciplinary role. The step-parent has lots of input to the parent outside of kids' earshot.
And while biological parents are used to hearing that you're not your child's friend, research suggests a friendly support system is what step-parents should try to be.
Step-parents need to focus on what I call connection, not correction. Building a new relationship, not setting rules.
Kirsten and Lisa's parents didn't have this research to guide them, yet they seem to sense it intuitively.
Anything super heavy-handed probably came from the biological parent, like being 5 minutes past curfew one night got me a month's grounded. So that came from my father.
Now, Lisa and Kirsten's parents were both widowed. Things can get more complicated when the stepfamily forms as a result of divorce, which is now more common. Sanders says it's important for the step-parent to reassure their stepchild that they are not trying to replace their other parent.
So saying explicitly, I know that all of this change might be really hard, and I just want you to know that, I'm on your side, and I'm not here to parent you or be some kind of parent figure.
She says creating a more positive relationship between a step-parent and stepchild is vital because it makes it more likely that step-siblings will get along too. She says, just remember, like all close relationships, these things take time.
When you give step siblings, when you give step families space to really find their own pattern of development instead of forcing a mold upon them, that's where we see positive outcomes.
That was NPR's Maria Godoy looking into how families can set the stage for healthy relationships between step-siblings.
This is the Metro right here on 101.9 WDET FM. Just heard from Nick Austin, and I'm Tia Graham. The Red Wings lost to the Capitals 2-1 last night. They face the Penguins tomorrow. Definitely hurt their chances trying to get into that wild card spot, the last one at least. The Tigers beat the Pittsburgh Penguins 5-2. They play the Twins tomorrow at Comerica Park, and the Pistons lost to Philadelphia 102-120. They host Chicago tomorrow. Their last game is this Sunday against the Spurs. And thinking about all types of things, of course, thinking about good music coming up later today on the show, or actually on WDET, is In the Groove with Ryan Patrick Cooper. Ryan, are you there?
Oh, I'm here. I'm always here, waiting, watching, supporting the Metro. Today, we got a really fantastic show. It's obviously gorgeous out, and we'll pair some of the music with that. Of course, new releases from Detroit and beyond. That is the name of the game. I'm also going to open up the vaults a little bit, celebrating my own birthday with some of my favorite songs ever. So we're going to kind of make sure everyone else gets cake before I do. I'll share some of my favorite tracks from deep in the catalog coming up here on In the Groove. Birthday bangers only.
I didn't even know how to just threw that on us, I guess. Happy birthday, Ryan.
That's the normal way people respond, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for letting us know what's happening on The Groove. That's the Metro for April 10th. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Our engineer is Nate Bender.
The Metro is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear and want to support the Metro, consider becoming a member at WDET.org/donate.
Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you tomorrow. You're listening to 101.9 WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.